In between the vicious attacks on his family, Prince Harry shared a lot of personal and sensitive material and memoir spare. But the unnecessary revelation that's landed him on hot water the most was this Taliban kill count brag.
I could always say precisely how many enemy combatants I'd killed, and I felt it vital never to shy away from that number. Among the many things I learned in the army, accountability was near the top of the list. So, my number? 25.
Harry has rightly faced plenty of criticism for those grotesque revelations with army chiefs, saying he's selfishly putting the lives of his fellow soldiers in danger. And now the Defense Secretary, Ben Wallace, has extraordinarily echoed that condemnation.
Boasting about tallies, or talking about tallies, does two things. It distorts the fact that the army is a team game. It's a team enterprise. For an infanteer to go over the top, that person is supported by hundreds of people behind them. It's a team, and so it's not about who can shoot the most or who doesn't shoot the most. And I think if that's just my personal view, if you start talking about who did what you're actually doing is letting down all those other people.
To react to this sensational intervention from a cabinet minister. This has been Wallace, one of the most respected cabinet ministers of his time, lashing out at Harry. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, you know, I was a few weeks ago in a country house party with one of the former heads of the army, and he was telling me that Harry's confession, boast, whatever you want to call it, is such a breach of protocol, and it is so outrageous, and it opens up the army to all sorts of accusations of inhumanity, etc., all of which are unfounded. But Harry has to sell a book. He has thrown all of the army under a bus. And I know that the army has been tremendously upset about it, because not only did this senior ranking army officer tell me, but I've heard it from more junior army officers as well. It's what he has done is such a betrayal of the protocols governing military life. You can't exaggerate how serious this is.
It's a big deal for the Defense Secretary currently dealing with a war to decide to weigh in on a member of the royal family.
Yeah, I slightly differ, Dan. Good evening. I'm not sure it was wise for Ben Wallace to particularly bring this up now. I mean, he was asked a question, and he's quite a straightforward guy, as politicians go, and he gave a straightforward answer. And I'm sure he's reflecting what he's been told by a lot of people in the armed forces, that they are very upset with what Harry said. And some of the points he made are quite right. But I don't think King Charles would be particularly pleased that this has raised its head again. I mean, I think he would probably hope that things are starting to die down after Harry's book. And he's now very much looking forward to the, trying to organise the coronation and decide what to do about whether Harry's invited and Meghan Markle is going to come. So, I can understand him expressing his opinion, but I don't think it's particularly helpful to bring it all up again, and just at a time when it was dying down.
So it's certainly not helpful timing for King Charles, because Harry will be absolutely ropeable about this. Absolutely ropeable. Now look, the other big rural story today. Lady Susan Hussey, trusted servant to the late Queen Elizabeth the Great for 62 selfless years, has made a sensational return to the royal fold after King Charles and Prince William really sort of thrown under the proverbial bus at the behest of anti-royal race-baiting activists saying gozy. Princess and boldly ignored the woke mob by our ski Lady Hussey to stand in for her at Dame Frances Campbell Preston's memorial service at the Royal Hospital in Chelsea on Tuesday. Now, what does this show? Does it show that this is the royal family conceding that they were far too quick to judge when it came to Anglesey Flawney? Has a lot of issues around her credibility.
Well, yes, but you need to remember that when the announcement regarding Susan Hussey was made, this was in a very tight timeline after Marlene Headley, posing as Ngozi Fulani, made her accusations, and before the Earthshot Prize. And my understanding is that to salvage the Earthshot Prize and not have a repeat of William and Catherine's visit in Jamaica, where, something that was supposed to be positive became a whole big political mess because of race baiters and race baiting, that Susan Hussey did the decent and the honourable thing and allowed them to let her superficially fall on her sword, but that they were always going to maintain relations with her. And remember, she stayed at Sandringham. She's been to church with the king. You know, she has, and I made the point at the time that she was never going to be dropped privately, that this was a way of salvaging.
But I don't like that. I don't think we should throw people under the bus to appease the woke mob, especially not when they have given loyal service, by the way, for free over decades and decades.
No, I think Princess Anne was actually horrified when this whole thing blew up in the first place. And I think it's very significant that she's the person who's brought her back doing a job representing her at a funeral. I know that she contacted her after it happened and told her to, supported her. So I think it's very good that Anne has come out and made a public, made something public that she's able to come. What amazes me is the fact that she's actually willing to come back and do something. I think most of us, the way that she was treated, would say, well, forget it, I'm not interested.
Go and do one. No, very good point.
It shows what a wonderful woman she is.
It does. It really does. And she is. And that's what we all found out. And it really exploded in the face of End Goes. Meghan's old blog posts are continuing to come back to haunt her and destroy this manicured system image that she's manufactured for herself. And in a Father's Day message from 2014, it's emerged that Meghan praised her supposedly selfish and horrible dad Thomas for working 75-hour weeks and tirelessly devoting himself to her. Future, this is where first into, isn't it? She wrote, I think of so many moments with my dad, our club sandwich and fruit smoothie tradition post my tap. And ballet classes, which by the way, he religiously took me to on Saturday mornings after working 75-plus-hour weeks as a lighting director. The blood, sweat and tears this man invested in my future so that I could grow up to have so much.
My darling Dan, you might have forgotten, but you read my book, and I said in my book 3 years ago that what she did to her father was going to come back to bite her, because what she had said in The Tig and The Working Girl was absolutely the opposite, and that she had committed two cardinal errors. One was she had thrown her father under the bus, and two, she had put too much of her personal life, feelings, experiences into the public domain on those blogs, and that they would come back to bite her because one thing completely disagreed with the other. And 3 years later, everybody's finally waking up to the fact that yes, every word out of her mouth now is contradicted by a word out of her mouth in the past. The woman has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. She is a pathological liar who simply cannot get her story straight and will say anything to create an opportunity for herself to make more money or trash people who are going to interfere with her narrative. She is a total disgrace to humanity, and I don't know how anybody could ever believe anything that she has to say ever again.
And what's so sad is that Meghan admitted how amazing her dad was. She only turned on him after she became famous, because she was embarrassed by him. That says so much about her character, doesn't it? Or are we being too harsh?
No, I think it's extremely sad. The saddest thing about this whole Harry and Meghan thing is the way she's treated her father, I think. I mean, especially as he's been ill. You may remember last week, Dan, I made reference to the fact that Meghan worked at the US Embassy in Buenos Aires, and that prompted Samantha Markle to actually get in contact with me. And she said that, in fact, she was on an internship, and that was actually paid for by her father. So that's yet another example of how he was trying to support her in her career. And for Harry to now say that, she no longer has a father and just completely ignore him, even though he's just a few miles down the road in Mexico, and still not want to make it up with him. I mean, it's very, very sad indeed. And I just don't know if that's ever going to change. But as Lady C says, she's made so many lies about it in the past, and she always used to praise him for her success.